How's it going, Frosty friends? Today, I'm super excited to be bringing you all the latest entry in our interviews from the Alliance segment, where we'll be interviewing top-level players, asking them questions about their personal experiences with the game, as well as any tips they have for improving in Apex Legends. Today's interviewee is MerrDawg, and we're super excited to have him on since he's actually been playing Octane since long before any of these buffs in the recent patch that have been making Octane so prevalent in the current meta. He's a multi-season pred, first reaching the rank in Season 3 and continuing to do so in subsequent seasons. He's absolutely cracked out of his mind, and so you'll see that in the highlights, as well as the 30 kill, 6.2k damage game that we'll have playing in the background during the interview. If you're looking to find more of MerrDawg, you'll be able to find him on Twitch at MerrDawg, and we'll be plugging all of his socials below in the description, so if you're looking for good vibes and some really high level play, make sure to tune in. Alright, with all the introductions out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with the interview. Thanks so much for coming on the interview today, MerrDawg. Really appreciate your time today. So let's sort of like get into some of the boilerplate stuff. So how did you start out with the game?
So funny enough, I was playing Fortnite, and then I remember everybody raving about a game. Hey, you play Apex Legends? Have you played Apex Legends? Everyone's going crazy about it. All the biggest streamers streaming. I was like, shoot, I gotta try it out. Downloaded it. Started playing it. I was an absolute noob. Still played on controller back then, and just I don't know, fell in love with it immediately. Like playstyle, guns, the physics of it, movement, all of it was just like high tier. So just fell in love with it right away off of Fortnite, and then never looked back. That's pretty much it.
Dang, that's really awesome. So I've heard it told to me, and I don't know like how correct this is, and so like totally like looking for you to fill in the blanks here. But like at least like your story like with the game like overall like in your career is like that, like you like worked really hard to like reach this point like where you were ready to make the push for pred, and like at that level that there's just like a limited pool of teammates, because I mean you're playing every single day against the best players in the world, and so if you're between going with like the tried and true gold standard or someone like you just don't know and giving them their shot, like you're just you're not really sure, so like you just kept showing up on the win screens and you kept working at it, and then like you found a squad and like you took your shot. It's like, is that sort of accurate? Like,
so the way I envision it is more of like kind of like a ladder you climb. So it was more like, I think it was Season 3, I switched to MK, and it's the first game I've ever played on mouse and keyboard. And I really wasn't the best, but I had good game sense. So first split, I just used like some LFG discords, like looking for group. I would just find some random people to play with. Sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't. And then just from there, it's kind of like a ladder you climb. So it's like, as I got better players would consistently play with me, right? So it's like, and you just keep climbing that ladder and you get higher and up, like call it Predator, like playing competitive, more people start seeing your name, more people they start recognizing, more people give you that chance to play with you. And then it just like kind of keeps going from there. But yeah, that's like, kind of sums up how you get like, kind of like climb that ladder, like in pretty much any game. Just
like how you like push through that boundary to like make it to pred, right?
Yeah, it's kind of it's tough when like you don't have teammates and stuff, but that's just kind of like how it goes. Like it's just like you keep finding better and better teammates to run with, and then eventually it's like you start running with like some of the best players, and then it's like you consistently start having like more squads and stuff like that.
That's really awesome. I don't know. It always like makes me happy to hear like the hard work story, like paying off of like someone who just like puts in the work and like kind of like, makes it there. So like, like during like that process, did you ever like sort of like feeling like any like sense of like discouragement or like frustration, like that, like maybe you weren't finding the teammates you needed to, or you weren't progressing as fast as you did?
For sure. Switching to like MK, like especially without having or like knowing anybody. I remember like the first time I got Predator, I think the first split I moved to MK, I got Masters, and then I got Predator the next one, and I finished at top 130, and I was like super happy about it. But then after that, I thought I was under like the notion that I get Predator, that's the highest rank in the game, everybody's gonna like call it respect you, everyone's gonna want to like they're gonna like take that and be like, hey, this is a great player, you're gonna play with like a lot of good players. And what it ended up being was like you didn't really, that didn't really happen. It's kind of like still that same grind until like you meet people, and you just like have to you keep pushing through and climb with that.
Gotcha. So you feel like there's like a social side of it also?
Yeah, it's more like Apex is super clicky, where it's like it's only 3-man teams, right? So your friend group that you play with is only like a tops 20 people, and to break into that most of the time, at the higher end, call it, you have a lot of players that want to play with you, right? So like imagine the biggest streamers, content creators, pro players, good players. They have a good amount of people they could always reach out to play with because they're like peers. And like once you have a friend group, you don't really reach out to like other people like, hey, do you want to play sometime? Because it's the only way you would do that is more like for networking or like collabing and stuff like that on streams. Yeah, so it's like it's definitely tough. Like still, like even when you get to like the highest point, like to like keep finding people to play with, it's just kind of like more time you do it, the more people you find.
Yeah, it's like not like anyone's like in particular just trying to be toxic. It's just sort of just like how things are shaking out, right?
Yeah, just more like friend groups. It's just Apex is clicky. It's like somebody reaches out, hey, want to play? Don't really know you, and I have 10 friends on right now. You know what I mean? So
they're
it's like
all asking for my time, and it's
exactly. So it's like I'd much rather play with like my friends who like I enjoy playing with than like maybe take a shot with someone I don't really know who might not be as good as I want, who I might just not have fun with. You know what I mean? There are some of the best players, you just don't have fun with them. So it's like if you're having fun with people, just keep playing with like those people for the most part.
Yeah, that's like actually super funny because like I feel like I had a similar problem where like it like I was like of course nowhere near like the same level, but it's like, you know, I like was like I think it was like season 4 or something, and it's like me and Papega, I don't know if you know, like we ran for like almost like an entire like season straight, like every single day, like playing, which was like kind of weird for like players at our skill level at the time. And you know, we had a third like named like King, and so like the three of us just ran games together, and like anytime like anyone like wanted to like get in on that and like play with like any one of us, it was just like we were like I don't know.
I already have
you don't want to give up on the boys, you know?
Exactly. That's exactly what it's like.
Dang. Okay. And so like I guess like what was like sort of your general approach, I guess, was just like sort of like working your way up the ladder. Is that like sort of like an approach that you'd like recommend for others, or is it sort of like in your eyes like the only way? Do you have like, any advice on like, you know, how like, you know, people like maybe could emulate that if like they're looking to reach a similar level of play?
I think like skill level just is always apparent to most other skillful players, so it doesn't always have to happen that way. I think like I made a bigger jump than I thought I would have. It's more just, it's kind of how it works just in general with like kind of like I envision it as a ladder. Other people can envision it how they want it. It's just more like it doesn't matter how good you are, right? If you message some of the best players, it's not that they're going to ignore you. It's just more like, who is this random person? I don't know. I'm not going to just randomly play with some random person I don't know who doesn't have, call it, the accolades or like those high ranks. So you can have the skill of an aimbot essentially, but those people still wouldn't play with you. So you always have to have some type of like climb to like prove yourself. But then once that happens, it's usually pretty straightforward, and like skill recognizes skill. You know what I mean? Like game recognizes game.
Yeah. And like you feel like there's like an attitude or personality like segment to that too. Like if you're like I assume like if you're like not a nice person, that people wouldn't really want to play with you that much.
Yeah, I envision it more as like ego. So for sure, if you're not like as fun to be around or people don't enjoy playing with you, it doesn't really matter how good you are. Like I know for me playing ranked, if you're not a fun person, you're constantly criticizing and just saying things that don't have to be said. It's just more like, hey man, I'm not gonna play with you anymore. Like, you know what I mean? I don't need this. Like I'm having fun with my other friends. But
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's more of like ego, where it's like you have some really good players that are like, I'm better than him, I don't want to play with him, or I'm better than them, I don't want to play with them, I don't want to give them my shot, I'm gonna play with the people I know. But once you like, that's like kind of like where there's blurred lines for like better players. I know a lot of really good players that will play with anybody that hits them up that are also like predators, and it's like I respect that. You know what I mean? And then you have some players that they'll play with the same 10 friends and won't like play with anybody else. Doesn't matter how good you are. So it's like kind of a mix of all of them, where it's like you have your friend group you vibe with, you have ego, or you're just a toxic person and no one wants to play with you. And it's like all three of those things mixed combined.
Yeah. All right. So you hear that at YouTube? Don't be toxic. That's not the play, clearly. All right. So like maybe let's talk about sort of like where you're at with the game right now. So like you know, like what's going on with you right now? Like you like play like, so I think it sounded like you were like playing in ALGS and scrims and stuff like that. Is like that still going on?
So yeah, currently OT4 of Winter Circuit is happening, I believe, this Saturday. And I'm still like pursuing that. These last two, I just was doing it for fun with a mod and a viewer. I was having fun with it, but now I'm gonna try to push for like more competitive, try to do better, qualify for like final lobbies, playoffs. some of those things and push towards it. It's definitely a climb. It's definitely like, doesn't matter how good you are, doesn't matter if you have like the best skill, you really need to like make a push specifically for competitive and understanding the way it works.
Yeah. And so it's like, it's just like a completely different like sort of like play style and everything like that you're like working with there, right, at that point.
Yeah, 100%. Like I always say this, that like if let's say you were hacking and you had aimbot, you still wouldn't do that well if you didn't understand the way it worked at that competitive level, because the game is like, your rotations have to be so on point, your understanding of the zones have to be so on point, your synergy with your teammates have to be so on point that like it's very difficult to like I would say you can't even learn those things in a regular lobby. You just have to keep playing competitively, scrims, tournaments, smaller tournaments, bigger tournaments, whatever it may be, to understand and learn those things more and more and to get better with it. Like it's a whole nother ballgame essentially.
Dang, that's like really cool. I always like love to hear like how there's just more levels to the game. There's like just more depth to be found, because I mean, it's like crazy that you're playing like the same game. I mean, like it really hasn't changed that much fundamentally in like the 2 years it's been out. You know, like maybe the maps and stuff, right? But like it's like the same game, the same map. You're on it for thousands of hours, and like, you know, like the more I talk to people, the more like I hear there's just more and more layers to peel back. It's just really cool. And you're like still like hitting like, do you like, you know, like each season, like are you still like shooting for like hitting pred and like ranked like regularly, or because I know like that like is definitely like a time commitment also, right? Because you're just climbing against all the other people who are aspiring predators, right?
Yeah, it's definitely like a time grind where it's like you might be super skilled and be able to get there every time, but it's definitely like a time grind where you have to pour hours and hours into just grinding for it. So I'm currently not like pushing for Predator, because it was, for me, I remember the first time I hit Predator, it was, hey, I got the highest rank, what next? And for me, that was competing. But currently I'm just focusing on like other, call it, things for my growth, like facets. Like I can move, like pursuing like solo pubs, content creation, and that kind of stuff. And like the rank grind is like a lot of, it's just a lot of time pouring into it. So like, would I love to be Predator every season or every split? Yeah, but I mean, for me, it's not, it doesn't hold that much more meaning than it did, than like, it doesn't hold that much meaning for me anymore, because I know I've done it already. So like, I can consider myself that level of player. Yeah.
And so is it like, so like then like what are like, so are you like kind of like working on stuff like inside the game, or are you sort of like trying to like work on sort of stuff like, I guess like that's like adjacent, like you mentioned like content and like streaming and that sort of stuff. Is it like, are you like trying to, I guess, like make yourself, I guess, like a little bit more available to viewers and to like, I guess, people, you know, who are like just the community at large, or like, are you like really trying to like drill down on stuff for like these, like the scrims and everything that you've been mentioning in ALGS?
It's kind of a mix of most, but like you kind of hit like the head of the nail. I don't really know what that's saying, but
yeah,
saying playing ranked, you can't like spend that much time focusing on like reading chat, interacting, and that kind of stuff. And I feel for the most part, there's a lot of downtime. Like let's say you have a 20-minute game, 13 minutes of that is just you sitting in a house or just rotating, not even playing the game for what I'd like to do. But I also see it as, I would say I grew more in one split of just playing solo pubs, like with gun skill, than I do the entire time I play ranked, pouring hundreds and hundreds of hours into it each split, just because of how many more engagements you have, just how much more you have to like move around and just run around. So for me, getting better mechanically, I feel pubs is like a way better way to do that. And then at the same time, it goes, I can interact with chat, I can do fun challenges, things like that I prefer to do over just the rank grind specifically.
Definitely. I mean, like there's so many like different ways to become good at the game, I guess. And at least I know for some players, it's like the rank is like all they see, but it means like being good. But like, you know, it's like, there's a different play style to playing in pubs, I feel like, right? And like,
100%. I was
it's a different skill set.
Yeah, 100%. I was just talking about this with my my friend Chicken Nuggy, and he's an Apex Predator as well, and he Predator level player, but for some reason he was saying like he was not having like some really big games, or was like in pubs, it's like the way it plays out is way different than a ranked or like a competitive playlist, whereas you have players that are like rotating on time, or like playing as a three, like playing together, and like they're calling out all this stuff. And in pubs, like you can kind of deal with teams, like if you just have decent game sense, like it's just kind of most players aren't working that well together, and you can run through those like players, and you can, I say, finesse like specific squads. But yeah, they're definitely two totally different like games when you play them.
Yeah, I actually think there was one time I actually ran into you, like you were in our lobby, and like you like played our squad like it was so ridiculous. Like, you made some like ridiculous play at Olympus, like above Hammond's Labs, like with like those little banners or something. And you like baited our squad down there or something. Like it was something crazy, and I was just like, all right, like it wasn't even that like this dude had like better aim or whatever. It's like he was just literally smarter and like better at the game overall than us. Like had more map knowledge, was able to get his character in that position. I was just like, what the hell did just happen to me? Like it was crazy. And then I like saw it. It's like, oh, I know this guy. All right, now I understand like why that happened to me. Okay, so let's see here. So like, where do you see like I guess like maybe let's like look a little more like sort of like on the longer term, like, you know, do you set like longer term goals like with the game, or do you just sort of like take it like one season or like one like that sort of like level of granularity?
So specifically for like goals for, call it the game, I set goals for myself like mechanically, or like try to break my own records, just move it forward. But it's tough to set goals when the game is, it's like I just want to see personal development, and like as long as I'm getting better, I don't care. At like, obviously I want to get better really, really fast, but as long as I'm getting better to a certain extent, like at a decent speed, I don't set goals that are like too far-fetched or too hard to do. Like I just try to break personal records. So let's say like my highest kill game, right, is a 30 kill game with 6.2k damage. That's my biggest game I've ever had,
which is ridiculous.
So for me, breaking that record is like not unattainable, but it's just unrealistic to do. You know what I mean? Like every day sit down, all right, let's break that 30 kills, or let's break 6.2. It's just it's unrealistic to think every day I can keep getting more and more, like higher and higher and higher. But on the other hand, if I start consistently having 4Ks and 20 bombs and 5K damage games, then like for me feel much better. Like I'm setting those goals and like my work's paying off and I'm getting better mechanically. So for goals, it would just be more consistently have better games over the games that like I've been having.
Gotcha. So it's like sort of like, would you say like maybe like sort of like moving some of like your average scores, like your average like damage and like average kills like in the right direction?
So if I were like look at my stats, I think last season I had an 890 ADR. This season I have a 1200 ADR with a 5KD. So like you can see like there's like a 300 jump. There's a 300 jump in my average damage from last season to this season, which is like for me feels really good. And yeah, but I also don't like to compare to people. That's like one thing. I don't like to compare ADR. It's just for me and my personal growth, and that's like the goals I set for myself.
Yeah, you know, like I actually like that's like a topic that comes up a lot, like with a lot of my viewers. You know, it's like they're like I always tell them it's like, you know, it's like you like the only person you compare to is like, you know, yourself yesterday, right? It's like you just got to take like one step forward, because it's like if you compare to everyone else, like you know, nobody else like has like, you know, your like level of like amount of like play time and experience with the game or lack thereof, right? Some players have played a lot more. Some people like just are genetically like have like better aim or whatever, and like no one else like has like your experience of like how you need to improve, you know, like yeah. So everyone's got their own struggle, I guess. Okay, and so like, I mean, do you see yourself like? Do you have like any goals? Like, you know, like I guess like I hate to think about it, but you know, it's eventually like Apex like, you know, breathes its last breath, and Respawn finally blows up Kings Canyon too many times. And so like, do you see yourself like doing like, what do you see yourself doing like maybe after? Or you not
I haven't thought too much about after, but
yeah,
for after, just like right off the top of the dome without thinking too much about it, I would just say on to kind of the next game. I'm a super competitive person, and I like to be the best at like what I do and just always push to be the best. And I really enjoy like content creation, streaming, and that kind of stuff. And so it'd be more probably just finding another game and just pushing towards that, try to be better at that game, and just enjoy it along the way. There's no specific game I have in mind or anything like that, but that's something that I would probably pursue.
Okay, cool. All right, so I guess that's like a some good like a good hard pulse check on sort of like, you know, like where like you're at like with all like with the game and everything. So I guess like maybe let's move into like some of the more things that I feel like at least that I know about you that make you more like unique as a player. So like I've been told, you know, like you play Octane a lot, and I know you played him a lot like before like he became as like popular as he was. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, like, you know, like in earlier seasons, like I just like made fun of Octane because I just thought he was like kind of like a selfish, like low team utility character, and that's definitely changed a lot this season for sure. So like when you know, like initially started playing Octane, like, you know, did that matter to you, or did it just like, did the character just like sort of click for you?
I think it just clicked right away. If you look back and look at the roster we had, I think there were like maybe 8 legends or somewhere around there, maybe even less. And there weren't many to pick from. I mean, Pathfinder was probably the only other mobility character. I mean, you had Wraith, but everyone wanted to play Wraith. So I thought to myself, like, who can I play that I'll consistently be able to play and who's actually viable? For me, it was just in public match that everyone overlooked, like you said, that the stim, the speed boost, everyone overlooked how fast that is and how much you actually gain from it, and to consistently be able to run at a faster speed around fights, especially like having good mechanical skill. And I say this about Octane a good amount. It's that if you're a bad player, playing Octane isn't going to make you better. Versus like playing a Caustic, that'll help you like do better. But playing Octane is not going to help you in any way because you don't have any lethal abilities. So when you're good mechanically though, you do much better with a character like Octane because you can move around so much faster and get in and out of places that people couldn't do. And like you said, like most people just overlook that. But I took advantage of it full force, you know?
Yeah, and like I even think of things like strafing and stuff, right? Like if you stem up and you got like a really good strafe, like you'd be like really hard to hit.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was most of it. Like I just started playing Octane and I realized like, hey, I'm dying less. I'm getting more kills. I think the first time I ever got the 4K20 like in one game combined was on Octane.
Yeah.
Because it was just too fun to not play, and he was my character, my legend.
Yeah. That's cool, because like I just remember like that day and age, like way back when, where it's just like Octane was like kind of like, it was like like, you know, he wasn't like awful, right? Like there were characters that were at the time like just really like just not viable at all, which is kind of unfortunate. But like, he was like fine, I guess. But it's like definitely cool to see like you saw like a value, like I guess, and now people have like come to see it too.
I know, right? Everyone's running Octane.
Yeah.
I'm the OG.
Yeah, you are. So yeah, no one can take that from you, right? You're just like, I was playing Octane before you even heard of him. So like when he started like getting like all his buffs and all that sort of stuff, I'm sure you were pretty happy about that, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, starting with this season with the Octane buff, where the jump pad can now go, I think it was like 50 meters farther. It can now go the same distance as like a Pathfinder zipline. That was a massive buff to Octane, where it's like, let's say I'm running away from a squad, I could get away like much faster. Going to a fight, I could third party much faster, just push a squad. Like you could follow up on damage. You crack armor, you can just take a jump pad, you're there. They kept the aerial accuracy, so like most players don't know this, but if you slide off a jump pad, you're like 80% accurate in the air pretty much, until your second jump. And so like you could take advantage of a lot of those things with the new jump pad buff, which just makes him like 50% stronger than he was like previously. So yeah.
Wow, you think it's like that much? Like it's like 50% stronger?
I definitely think so, because the jump pad opens, like the original jump pad like moved too slow and you're way too predictable. But now talking about more, call it movement tech, implementing other things like tap strafing, which is a super like nuanced and higher tier skill to like perfect things like that, or air strafing, you can be way more evasive in the air, I'll say. So you can push things that you wouldn't be able to push previously, but it just opens up so many more fights. And then not even fights, just rotating, you go so much faster, so much farther, and you carry that speed for so much longer. So it helps you all around in the game to perform.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like the cooldown on the thing's so short, so I mean, like you can just like, if you decide your squad like is supposed to just be at a different like POI, you know, it's just like, all right, we're gonna be there. Like it's pretty cool. Yep. Let's see here. So is there like any like sort of like, you know, like I guess sort of specific tips and tricks like, you know, that you feel like you've picked up over like your very long and storied career like with the character that, you know, like that you feel like people don't talk about enough?
There are definitely some, and they're like they're high skill, I'd say, because most of them are movement. Like Octane's a movement character, and I'd say most of them are movement, and they're harder to perform. You have to have like keybinds for some and add them. Like I said, tap strafing, which is like where you would bind scroll wheel down or up to W key, and when you look, like let's say you look at a 90-degree angle, right? And you scroll with that W key, you'll actually carry momentum and go in that direction. Whereas like you wouldn't be able to carry momentum or even turn that fast usually. So like there's that paired with Octane, who's super strong. There's also like little one, like when you're popping a med kit. So like you're healing up, you're not full health, you're finishing a med kit, you can stim as a med kit pops off. And when it finishes, you'll be 100 health, but you'll still have that stim speed, which is like now you're not losing 12 HP. So especially if you have like lower colored shields, like you have white armor, that's big. You know what I mean? That's almost 10% of your health.
Yeah, it could be like 1 to 2 bullets from like depending on the gun, right?
Exactly. So like that makes it like those little things like what you learn. But other than that, I wouldn't say there's much. It's more just like utilizing his movement compared to your movements, like wall bouncing and sliding and bee hopping and all those other movement tech. That's part of the game. Yeah.
So it's just like having, I guess, like the fundamentals of Apex, like in terms of like his movements, like those are the things that you really need to focus on if you want to go further with the character.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was saying, like he has no lethal ability, so just like Octane's all movement. So you just have to be good at movement, and that'll make you like so much better of a player to like utilize Octane.
Okay, yeah, totally makes sense. So like, do you feel like there's anything like you do with the character that like makes it very clear that like MerrDawg is playing Octane right now as opposed to like someone else? Like, is there anything like you feel like you do that just nobody else does?
I don't know. I don't think I really have anything that's signature call it MerrDawg, but I do think I have a really like good understanding of his jump pad movement and his stim ability and when to stim and when not to stim. But I don't think it's call it a signature MerrDawg. I just think that there are a lot of Octanes that don't understand when to stim, when not to. Kind of like going against the caustic, you don't stim, right? Or utilizing a jump pad to take the height or anything along those lines. Like I'm really good at utilizing that character just because of how much time I have played and like repetition. But yeah, I don't think there's anything specific to MerrDawg is chasing me. That's MerrDawg right there.
Yeah. All right. Okay, that's cool. I mean, I guess it's like if the Octane's like already killed you, maybe that's how you know it was MerrDawg. So like you see like any like sort of like I guess like you've like alluded to it a couple times, like he just doesn't like have any lethal abilities, right? Like, do you see like any other like limitations like of the character, like aside from that?
So I'd say his stim is his biggest downfall right now. Whereas like so he stims, he takes minus 12 health, so he can't die from stimming. So like he can't be 1 HP stim and then he would end up dying if he was full health, like in a big minus. So you can't die from it, but the problem is, like I said before, if you're going against a caustic or you're in zone or anything like that, your abilities are all like negated essentially because you don't passive heal for 4 seconds like after you take damage. So if you're in zone, like every second you're taking damage, so or like every second half, I don't know the equation, but you're taking damage there. Yeah. Against the caustic, your health, you don't want to stim because then you're losing that health, which is like, it makes you like 1 to 2 less ticks for that caustic ass. So you want to stay alive longer. So like in those scenarios, you wouldn't be able to utilize those abilities, but that's like pretty much his only downfall. But in specific scenarios, it can be a pretty big one.
Okay, so like sort of like in those situations where health is like kind of at a premium, like because that's like the resource he's spending. Okay, and sort of like the way you work around them is you just don't use his abilities as much. Is that sort of what it comes down to?
Pretty much, yeah. So you would just rely on the jump pad, or like let's say you're in zone and you're like healing a med kit. Like I said, you're able to stim if you time it right as you finish the med kit. But other than that, like you just can't use it. No stim for you. Like just no stimming, and that's that. If you're fighting against that.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. So then I guess like this question is like a little bit more like complicated, but it's, you know, like there are like a lot of players I think that like for whatever reason feel like they're vibing like with like an off meta character, right? That's not as popular but like they feel like they see the value in them. So it's like, do you have any advice for players like that?
I would say, I think like using an example would be easiest for me to say something like that. Whereas like Mirage is a super off meta character that's pretty much almost always a selfish character, kind of like you were saying before about Octane. But
yeah,
I mean, he has the invisible res, and he can invisible res beacon. But other than that, he doesn't help his team much. I would say if you want to use those characters, or legends, what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna want to like master the abilities and techniques specifically of that legend, because most legend metas, like let's say Gibraltar, his bubble is pretty straightforward, or like Bloodhound, his scan's pretty straightforward. Caustic, same, throw down the barrels, you're good to go. But like utilizing a bamboozle or a decoy and your ultimate is super like niche, when you should do it, when you shouldn't do it, when it's gonna help you best. So just like dial in and analyze when those things are at their best and when they're the strongest, and try to follow up with those abilities. Whereas like you might throw a decoy and then you off peak, like you take an off angle, they shoot the decoy, you get to shoot them, kind of thing. And then like analyze when those are the best times. And it works for all legends that are off meta. You just have to like really dial in on like what like the timing of using your abilities is.
Got it. And so it's like you just have to know the character better than, like, you just have to have a bigger bag of tricks, I guess, right, than like the enemy's expecting. Okay. And so like do you see like any other like off meta characters right now that you think like that like kind of stick out like in the same way, maybe not to you specifically like Octane did, but it's just like, you know, maybe have like the makings of being a great character? Are there any like sort of characters you see right now in the roster that just aren't seeing the right amount of playtime, you feel? I
don't know, I need a list of characters in front of me. No, but looking at the legends, I'd say, I don't know, I think most of the characters that are being played or that you see more playtime are kind of in the right place. I'd say Mirage is probably one of the only ones that like you can really utilize that is actually much stronger now with the recent buffs with the footsteps. Like I don't see enough Mirage mains for in public match like how strong he could actually be. Like I think Mirage is pretty good. Yeah, I think that's about it. Maybe Loba, but I don't know what her pick rate is. I feel like I just don't see enough Lobas.
Yeah. How do you feel about Rampart?
So the thing about Rampart is she probably has the most depth out of a character for like call it the non-meta characters, where it's like you have to have a really good understanding of like how long it takes to get walls down, where to put the walls, how to utilize a Sheila, how to utilize like your passive abilities. And it's super complicated for, I'd say, like a new player, because her walls aren't really that strong and her abilities aren't really that strong, and to utilize those you just have to understand them just better.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it'd be super tough for someone who's newer to the game.
Definitely. Okay. Yeah, I only ask because like I'm like literally like in the middle of like wrapping up the edits like on a video about Rampart. And it was like the whole reason like I even like looked at her was because it's like, you know, everyone knows that feeling like when you round the corner and like you see like that stupid Rampart emplacement with like all the walls, and she's sitting on the high ground and she's got like Sheila pointed at you, and just like, all right, well this sucks. And it's like, you know, it's like there's like very few situations I feel like that make you feel that way. Like the only other situation I could think of is like when you see like a bunch of like Watson or like Caustic stuff like set up inside of a building, you're just like, all right, I just really wish like this fight wasn't this way right now, you know? And so it's like, I guess like that's like sort of like why I asked about her, right? Because like so I feel like, you know, she's got her like strong situations. It's just,
yeah, 100%. She definitely does. I would say her biggest downfall is just more when a better player is going against a Rampart and they have an in-depth understanding of the way her walls work. And then also if that player doesn't really understand that like quick example, if I'm running a wingman, right, which deals 45 damage a shot, the wall's health is 45 damage off placement. So it takes a few seconds for them to place, I think 3 to 5 seconds. So if I have eyes on them and they put out a wall, I'm going to break that wall with one bullet. So that, what is that, a 20-second cooldown, right? 15-second cooldown. So that's like all of her abilities other than her ultimate, essentially, for one bullet of my like wingman. So if you have a lot of like setup time and you're going to play end zone, there could be some strength to it, but when you pair that against like other legends that are easy to learn, it's definitely going to be difficult to run a Rampart. I think
gotcha.
There isn't really a place for it right now.
Yeah, I do feel like the changes to HP helped a little, or the HP of like the walls helped, because it was like it used to be. It's like it didn't have to be a wingman. It could be like literally anything as long as you just like breathed on it. So I guess like maybe some moves in the right directions. Okay, that like sort of like wraps up like all of like the questions like that I had like pre-written. Are there like any sort of like I guess general tips or advice or things that you've like been thinking about rolling around in your head with regards to the game that you want to share with the people? I guess.
I hate caustic.
You hate caustic?
I hate caustic.
I don't agree.
Nerf caustic.
I don't disagree. Excuse me. Like
Just some general tips I have. I always say this to like viewers in chat, people I'm talking to, is analyze your gameplay way more. It doesn't matter how many hours you have. It doesn't matter if you have 100 hours or 4K hours. If you're not analyzing why you're losing or winning or understanding like the gunplay or damage numbers, anything along those lines, you're not going to get much better. So just always like pay attention to things that you're doing and why you're doing them, and formulate like plans going into certain scenarios, and you'll always come out in a much better scenario, whether you died but you did more damage or you ended up winning because you thought about it.
Gotcha. Yeah, because like I that's like something that I came up like with Papega, and like also that like I try to tell to my viewers, it's like you just like gotta like make choices, and it's like if you're wrong, it's a video game, right? But it's like you have to be wrong a couple of times to know like what it's like to be right, and like process elimination, because there's like just too many things you can do in the game, and there's a lot of wrong things you can do. You gotta start to learn like what those are, right?
Exactly. And another big one would, like, it goes hand in hand with like hesitation, whereas somebody thinks to go make a play, but they hesitate because they think, is this the wrong play, and then they die because they hesitated, whereas if they made the play, it was probably the right play. So it's like, just kind of don't hesitate, and don't be too worried about winning all the time, because you're not going to get better if you're like dying to hesitation because you're too worried about winning. So just go ahead and do it. You lose, you learn, you go again. And like that's kind of just how I would say like I got good at the game, is just doing that exact formula right there. It's like, try it, doesn't work, go again. Learn why you didn't.
Yeah. Like, so there's like, I feel like there's like a focus there, right? Like of improvement without like necessarily being like super like wrapped up emotionally in like how the game goes, right?
Exactly. I mean, it kind of goes to, it's funny you said wrapped up emotionally, because like I just recently watched a TED talk about being, how to practice better, and what it came down to was being emotionally wrapped up or invested in the win will hinder your growth from happening, because you can't practice and get better when all you want to do is perform. Then essentially you're not practicing. But if you're playing in the mindset that I don't really care if I win or lose, I want to do better than last time, you start to like pay attention to things you're doing wrong, and now you play better moving forward. So when you need to perform, you're going to do better than you were last time. And it's kind of like, don't get emotionally invested, essentially. Just play the game.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, it's a fun game. Like, I mean, you're still playing it after like all this time, so I guess that makes sense, right? Okay, yeah. So I guess that's everything we're gonna get out of MerrDawg. As I don't know if it was clear or not, but he's like streaming this on Twitch right now. He's got a Twitch channel, which is just MerrDawg on Twitch, right? Yeah, and we'll plug all his socials, below and everything. So if you're, I mean, this guy's like absolutely insane, out of his mind. So if you're like looking for some really, really great gameplay out of, someone who's clearly very smart and really wholesome, make sure to pop in. You always love to see, people who are like working on content creation and like are just, gonna provide good content, like getting some love. So yeah. So thanks so much for tuning in, everyone, and thank you, MerrDawg, so much for agreeing to come by for the interview, and we'll see you next time.
For sure. Happy to be here.